welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, this is Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. I am Jessica, your host, and I am here with the author of The West Facade. Welcome, Lauren C. Johnson.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you so much for coming. So this was a really interesting premise, and when I saw what the book was about, I was like, "Oh, that's actually pretty cool." You have a little magic, a little historical plague fiction. And the ever-present question about what it means to be human and mortal.
Yes.
So there's a lot going on, a lot of good classic themes told in a nice, fresh way. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to write this story?
Yeah. Oh boy. Okay. A little bit about myself. So I've always kind of juggled writing fiction with some creative nonfiction. First started writing with a background in journalism, but I'd always wanted to be a creative writer. I really kept getting called back to writing fiction, some of that in the forms of short stories. This was really my first attempt at writing a novel, and I think along the way it taught me how to write. But that means it also was a long process and a long project. And I've found that through the course of it, the stories that really stick with me, what I enjoy writing, are the speculative kind, are the kind that have that magic, those elements to it. And, as I was, really trying to figure out who I am as a writer and my voice as a writer, um, I kept getting called back to the story idea, and at first it was a little hard to take it. At first, when I first started, I wasn't sure if I should take it seriously or not because it didn't feel like straight up kind of literary fiction and not quite genre fiction. So I wasn't quite sure what to do with it, but the idea didn't really leave me. And so I brought it to workshops and just got support on the idea and just kept rolling with it. And I'm so glad that I stuck it out. Because it turned out to be just the process of writing this. I learned so much about myself as a writer, and it's been so much fun to share it.
And you work in tech, right?
I do. Oh
You
yeah.
do.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm here from my office in a little secret conference room.
So this is like the story being historical, it's very different from tech. So I'm going to assume that you love Notre Dame because that's where the story begins. That's the touch point. It's one of the statues. And she's the main character of the story. When did you kind of fall in love with it?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question because I definitely would not consider myself an expert at all on this cathedral. My interest in the cathedral and cathedrals in general are just from like a historical cultural perspective and architectural from an art perspective. I really come at them from an appreciation of kind of the human story of this is what we can achieve. This is art that we can create and build together. And I really, the first time I saw the Notre Dame Cathedral, I was struck by the gargoyles, as I'm sure a lot of people are. They really captivate the imagination, and the statues that are in these doorway niches, which is so the west facade of the Notre Dame Cathedral it's called that because it's the western side of the cathedral, and that's where the main entrance is. So if you want to go inside the cathedral, you'll enter through one of three main doors that are from on the western, yeah, on the west facade. And there you'll find like so many countless statues in the niches, and they're so jammed tightly together. And they have this, they're so expressive. And really, just when I looked at them for the first time, I just thought, what would it be like if they could, what if they could have thoughts about the people that they watched all day? What would, if they could come to life, what would they want? What would they think about? What would haunt them? And it was that what if that really stuck with me, that really I couldn't let go of when I decided I was going to pursue this story.
So the main character is a statue of Saint Genevieve, and she, I suppose, partakes in a luxury given to her from somebody passing by. And this takes place during the time of the plague, which is an interesting time, especially like if you're exploring mortality, like, as a statue, you wouldn't have to worry about that,
Totally.
but you would see it happening in front of
Yeah.
you. And, it's like it's very much like it calls back obviously, accepting a fruit and gaining something, reminds it of biblical stories. I don't believe, and like this is like a thing, like I always kind of like when I found this out, I was like, oh my God, really? And it sort of made me really smug around people who claim that the fruit from the tree of that Eve eats is an apple, and it's like actually no, it wasn't depicted as a specific fruit originally.
Oh,
So like I find it, very interesting. You have an
oh,
orange here, yeah, but
I
then
didn't know that.
but
I
then
actually
it all
didn't know that at all.
yeah,
Wow.
it's just the fruit from, I believe, the tree of
Knowledge, right?
yeah, knowledge, that's it, yes. I know, but I think like later depictions and then later translations, but anyway, before that you have like a Persephone story where she
Yes.
takes the pomegranate seeds. So I found it very intriguing that you chose an orange. Why an orange?
Ah, I love this question, and I especially love that you called back to the story of Persephone. I love that story, and I love that this is a tangent, but I love that there just seems to be Um, uh, there have been some new Persephone retellings, I think, in fantasy and popular culture, and I love them. And I really love how there's this kind of like almost feminist reclaiming of Persephone and Hades, and how maybe that relationship now is more romantic and healthy. And some of these stories are definitely fantasy. So I'm absolutely appreciating that trend that I've been seeing with some storytelling and myth retelling. But yeah, the story of the fruit. So it's really funny. That idea came to me. You mentioned that I work in tech as a day job, and I have for quite some time and have had always had day jobs to support myself. But this was several years ago, pre-pandemic actually. It was one morning, like early morning, I would get up. I would open up my personal laptop, I'd write, then get ready, then get on the train and get go to work. But one morning it was just really early, 5 a.m., and I was just so stuck on the opening. And this image came to me where I realized where it just came to me where somebody was putting a fruit into Saint Genevieve's hands, or Saint Geneviève, if I want to try to speak French. But yeah, that and I just thought in my head, why don't you give her a citrus? And it was just this thought that came to me. And I just ran with it at first. And later I realized as I was workshopping this chapter, these sections later, it was a friend of mine who said, "Oh, this is kind of like the forbidden fruit." And it was like, duh, obvious. Like I hadn't made that connection myself, even though it must have been so obvious to everybody else. But that came from my subconscious, I guess. And why a citrus that I was delighted when that thought came to me and kept it is I think that's my nod to where I grew up. I grew up in Florida, and my grandfather was a citrus engineer and would crossbreed citruses and grew a lot of just orange trees and tangerines, and would often come over with just bags of citruses. So I think in a lot of ways that was also my way of bringing Florida into this very anachronistic setting, which is medieval Paris, but making those connecting those through lines.
I found it interesting also because again, and we'll kind of talk about other things too, but this is a story, and I do want to know why you decided to set it during the plague, but
Yeah.
like citrus is supposed to be healthy. It's supposed to,
Yeah.
be like like vitamin C is something, your body is supposed to need. And I thought that was really really nice. So yeah, but I do want to know what about the plague time period seemed right for you?
Yeah. Again with the bubonic plague, that really kind of came about for two reasons. One was logistically, I had to make it believable that Paris would be dark enough that there wouldn't be enough lighting technology at the time because the statues in the novel, the statues come to life once a month on the new moon when Paris is completely dark, supposedly completely dark. I'm sure, people had torches, kerosene lamps, candles, but no major lanterns or light sources like that. So I had to pick it at a time when that would be believable or a little bit more believable. I really am asking readers to suspend their disbelief here. Um, but so that was one part of it. The other part of it is the cathedral was first constructed in the 1100s, but it took about 100 years to complete, and the statues I think the ground was broken the 11 into the 1100s and all throughout the 1200s it was being built. And the statues were placed on the cathedral, I believe, in 1220 something. And so, but the cathedral wasn't finished being built. So I was like, it's not going to make sense to have the story set then while it's still under construction. And I wanted to give the characters enough time where they could have there was time and space where they could be observing people, where they could have developed their own feelings that are separate from who the people believe me to be. The people think I'm a saint, but am I really a saint? Am I just representing one? So it was about logistically what would make sense with the Awakenings, the logistics of that world building, and also just a time continuity. And I realized the best time to make all of it connect would have been in the 1300s. And what was happening in the 1300s that would really raise the stakes, um, other than, the Hundred Years' War going on with England at the time, which would have probably felt distant for a lot of people, was the bubonic plague. And so that just when I realized that, doing that historical research, realized that, okay, this is going to make sense for the world building and the rules in the book, but it's also historically going to really, this is the event that will really up the stakes and put into relief that decision about, do I want to live amongst the people or not? And what does safety mean? And what is mortality?
So another thing I also wanted to ask, and you sort of touched upon it, is the idea of world building
Yeah.
and how did it come about? Like again, I'm curious, how did you choose this particular statue to be your focal point? Obviously, if it was going to be a gargoyle, it'd be really hard for a gargoyle to kind of like walk around and,
Yeah.
be
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah. But at the same time, I'm also curious just about the rules of
Mhm.
this magic too, and how that came about for you with the world building.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that. So much of the world building and the rules was trial and error, I think. Just writing something and then realizing, no, this isn't going to work. This doesn't make any sense. In the earliest drafts, Genevieve was actually the statue of Saint Anne. And I'm trying to remember why I picked her. I think it just, that was a familiar name to me. I feel like the statue of Mary that would have been too distracting, that her story is so, her story is so weighted that it would have been, um, I just didn't feel like it was her story. And with Anne, the reason why I ended up switching to Genevieve is just first learning about where the statues actually are on the cathedral wall, and then just looking at photos, and then after I'd the first time I'd seen Notre Dame in person, but going back and looking at photos again, and just really being taken by this one particular statue that is the Genevieve statue. And then really deciding, like, wait a minute, this one particular statue is really calling out to me. Let me do more research on her. Oh, wait, she's the patron saint of Paris. And hearing her story, it made absolute sense to center her as the protagonist of this novel.
I thought it was really lovely. How long did it take you to write this?
Oh my goodness. When I really started taking it seriously, I think overall it took 10 years because at first I thought it was going to be a short story. Like I tried to bring it in as a short story to my MFA workshop because I was like, I'm going to go into my MFA, I'm going to write realist fiction, it's going to be serious. I'm going to try to be like an Iowa writer, whatever, whatever that means. And I just couldn't help myself. I had to bring in my magical stories, and this was one of them. But I realized I just could not, just the scope of the setting. And as I kept writing, it just demanded me to put more into it and to build it out. So it went from being a short story to a novella and then eventually into a novel. But as I was getting to know the characters, I didn't realize this would be I didn't realize it would be a novel at first. I considered myself at the time more of a short story writer. That's a form that I'm really drawn to. But it was, yeah, it was the form, it was the world building, it was the story itself that kind of picked up momentum the more and more that I worked on it and spent time with those characters. I would say, yeah, you asked me about time, and between that back and forth, yeah, workshopping it, it was a decade. It took me a good decade.
How did the process of shopping it around go?
Yeah, so that's such a great question. I did in the beginning when I felt like, okay, I've gotten it, is I've taken this as far as I can take it, which is so much advice that I've heard. If you're going to query agents, make sure that your manuscript is as tight as you could possibly get it on your own, what you would consider done, which is so hard. How do you know when it's done? You know it's done when you read it and you can't find any more holes and it feels more complete. It feels complete to you and you're as satisfied with it as you can. And you can't take the story any further by yourself. Um, I got to that point. Oh my gosh, when was that? That was the very end of 2023, I believe. And I started in the beginning of 2024. I started sending it out. I started querying it. And a friend of mine who I think of her also as well as a mentor, her name's Elizabeth Gahagan. She is a writer that I had the opportunity to study with in grad school. Um, I was talking with her that I was ready to query, and she just said, you know what? I know you're looking for an agent, but you should try to send it to Santa Fe Writers Project. She published with them. She had a great experience. And she said, the worst that happens is they say no. So why not? Just go for it. And I took her advice. I submitted my novel. The publisher offered to publish it, and I thought, okay, I could be querying this for so long. I know querying could go on for years, and even if you find an agent, it doesn't guarantee publication. The agent has to sell it. So I got to a point where I realized, like, I want my book to exist in the world, and it's time. I've been in this world for so long that I was eager to see it. I was eager to see it out in the world and ready to share it. So I happily accepted it, and I've been very happy with that decision.
Now that it's out there, what's that like? It's got to be really hard. I mean, that's a really long time to be developing this. Do you
Yeah,
want to return to this world now?
I do not want to return to
Really?
the
So
world.
you were ready
Yeah,
to let her
yeah,
walk into the world. And that's not
totally.
a spoiler. I'm talking
Yeah,
about the book.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah, I
yeah.
I do not want to write a sequel. I do not want to make it into a series. I'm ready. I'm so ready to leave medieval Paris. I've got another collection of I have a collection of short stories in the works that primarily take place in Florida, my home state. So I'm excited to get back to that. I will say I'm having a lot of fun promoting the West Facade. I'm enjoying these conversations. I love talking about it. I learn something new about my own process and what the book is about each time I have a conversation. So I'm really enjoying readings. I'm enjoying connecting with readers at events. I love live events. I love doing readings. But do I want to go back into that world and write another story with Genevieve? No, I'm ready for her to live her life.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful. Check out the West Facade. This was Jessica with Syosset Libraries Turn the Page podcast. My guest was,
Lauren C. Johnson.
and we are going to close this chapter of Turn the Page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.